สวัสดีค่ะ So first of all, congratulations on being on TIME100 Next this year.
Thank you so much.
How does it feel to know to be on that prestigious list?
Honestly, when I first got the email, I was in disbelief. I was in shock as well. I started screaming and I was like, okay, I need to call my sister just to make sure that things are right. Because I was like, is it real? What's going on? It was 5 a.m. I didn't know what was happening. I just woke up and I never checked my emails that early. But then it wasn't Duolingo, so I was like, okay, let me actually like read the email. And it actually took me a while until I realized how like significant that was, because things never happen like that, and it takes a while to process that kind of information.
So it must be a shock and a huge surprise to you on that day. 5 a.m. in the morning and you receive that email that you're on that list. Yeah, and how does it feel to know that you're only like one of a few Thais on that list?
It's just an honor. Like when I checked the previous years, I think there are people like Tim Pita, Thanathorn, Lisa from Blackpink, and Anon, the lawyer, and I was like, whoa, all of them, they're really influential people. And me, am I that influential? Like, I started questioning myself, and at the same time, it was just a huge surprise, and I was like, wow, I'm on the list alongside these people.
And most of the Thais who were on that list were mostly politicians or like a lawyer, but you're like a very young activist as well for LGBTQ, right? So how does this recognition mean to you personally?
I think personally, growing up, people told me to stop doing what I was doing. People were like, you shouldn't be an activist, because I actually started off as a climate justice activist when I was about 13 or 12, inspired by the Fridays for Future movement. I was told, no, get into high school, graduate university, get a job, and do whatever you want. So then I think after about 6, 7, 8 years, after finally getting that recognition, I felt really seen, I felt heard, and it was a moment where I felt like I just don't want to stop what I'm doing.
Take us back to that moment when you had to make that speech in front of all the MPs and the senators, and you had to make that speech in Thai language, which you said that was a language that you're not most comfortable with.
So Thai is I'll say third language, because English is my first language, and also Japanese. And I think it was around April or March when I gave my first speech with the Member of Parliament, and during that time, I was practicing all night, and before that day, we had a little briefing session online, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna speak in English now because I need to save my Thai and prepare for tomorrow. I'm not gonna use up my English, my Thai brain right now. So I kept practicing and practicing. So I would say the first speech went pretty well. Went better than what I've expected. But then the second time, it was June 18th, 4 days after my high school graduation, 2 weeks after Bangkok Pride. It was such a hectic time. And when I was told to give a speech, give a thank you speech, I was like, okay, thank you speech, what do I say? Because it's such a historic moment. And I was like, okay, it's definitely gonna pass. So I had to think within like 20 minutes what I was gonna say. I had to think in English first. And then I gave my speech. I was stuttering all over the place. I was about to pass out.
Right.
because it was in Thai and it was in front of the senators, which is a bit different compared to the member of parliament, because it was the old set of senators and they are much older, compared to the member of parliament. So I was just freaking out inside. But I think what I said was, and finally today we can proudly say that Thailand has marriage equality and love triumphed over prejudice. I think that word really stood out. And within a few hours, I saw it everywhere. So even though I got a lot of backlashes, I think for my Thai, like being there, being present, representing the younger generation was such an important thing, and the world probably resonated with what I said. Yeah.
Because your speech actually resonated around the world, and your speech was featured in international media as well. So that hard work must have paid off really well. But then talking about your journey as an activist, you just mentioned that you were a climate activist when you were younger, and then you decided to become an LGBTQ activist instead. What has been like a turning point where you felt that maybe I should become an activist for LGBTQ rights instead of climate?
I think it was an interesting process. I was a huge environmentalist, but at the same time, I've been calling myself a feminist ever since I was 12. But as time went by, I started realizing what I really wanted to advocate for, and I finally understood what intersectionality meant and how social issues are just not single issues. Everything comes together, and it's about what lens do we focus on. And I think when I started questioning about the societal structure, that was when I started advocating for LGBTQ plus rights.
And when we talk about LGBTQ rights, do you think you've succeeded as an activist yet, or is there anything else you want to do more?
I think success is definitely extremely subjective, and it's difficult to measure. We all have different definition of what success is. But at the same time, I think the movement that I've been a part of has been a huge success. It has brought a lot of hope back to Thailand and also our neighboring countries and all across the world, as we were able to pass the marriage equality bill. But personally speaking, I think there's a much long way to go for me, because it's not just about the LGBTQ plus community, it's also about youth that I'm advocating for. And I'm just excited for the future and what I could do.
And since you identify yourself as a cross-culture kid and you've studied at an international school and also a Japanese school, how did you navigate that gender bias? Because I'm pretty sure that most of your classmates hold different views about gender equality or even women's empowerment.
Well, when I was in one of the Japanese schools I went to, it was extremely difficult, especially because how Japanese society is created and how it works. People were like, no, women should stay at home. They should be the ones cooking. They should be the ones cleaning. And those words were coming out of my peers. So it was people around me who had a lot of, I would say, internalized misogyny and sexism and a lot of patriarchal views on gender, and it was difficult to navigate. However, at the same time, I really had a strong belief on my views. I tried to be open as much as I can, but at the same time, I knew what was right for me and for the world. So I tried to start conversations with people around me, and I would say test the water just by bringing up some news or examples. But it took me a while to really feel comfortable to talk about my own beliefs.
How hard was it for you to just stick to your beliefs despite all this pressure around you?
I think it was really difficult, but at the same time, I really had to put a mask on when I was at school or when I was in Japan at my grandma's place, because there was no way out for me to just tell them to stop thinking the way that they are thinking, because it's not my role to just really change how they think. So, really had to, I would say, consume media that really supported my beliefs and educate myself continuously and understand the social structure of gender better, so that I can, when people ask me questions, I can give a well educated response.
Yep. From your education at a Japanese school and then to an international school here in Thailand, how has your experience shaped your views and thoughts about gender equality?
I think with the patriarchal society I was in throughout middle school, it really shaped me into the person I am today. It made me want to fight for justice. And when I moved back to an international school, I felt free in a certain way that's like undescribable, because I felt like my voice was much more heard and respected. So I think it's always about like the place, the people you're with, and just believing in what you're doing.
So you really have like the support system where your thoughts and views are heard and respected, and that has shaped you into who you are today.
Yeah.
That's a very like compelling story here. So how are your family members reacting to your recognition and what you're doing right now?
I think my family was definitely over the moon. My sister was the first person who knew about it. And after I had a quick call with her, she texted me and she was like, "Now you're the cooler sibling." And I was like, yeah, maybe. But it was a really interesting interaction. It was because we were just both really excited when I told my mom and dad. They were also just really excited and happy. And I told them, don't tell anyone yet, because I'm not supposed to tell both of you. But apparently they started telling all their friends because of their excitement.
Because it was on TIME100 Next
Yeah.
as well, and that's like a global recognition.
Yeah. And I think on my Japanese family side, they really didn't know what the TIME100 Next list was. They tried searching and they were like, oh, interesting, cool. Yeah, so I think got a lot of positive response from people around me.
Now let's talk about marriage equality and gender equality here in Thailand. Even though marriage equality is finally legal in Thailand, are there any other changes that you want to see in terms of LGBTQ rights?
I think there is a lot more. We definitely need gender recognition. It will be crucial to all the trans and non-binary folks out there, also intersex folks, and it's something what many activists have been working on for the past couple of decades. We do really need that until we can call Thailand like the queer paradise. Yeah. Because it's not just marriage equality. And I think the other one would be the decriminalization of sex work. Because if you look at the sex workers who work in that industry, most of them are trans women, and we need to protect them. We need equal human rights and dignity for them to be recognized as people working and contributing so much to Thai society.
Yeah, and how far do you think we have come in terms of gender parity, especially in Thai society?
I think with the marriage equality bill and with the impact of Pride, we have influenced a lot of people, not just the citizens, but also the government, people from the public and private sectors. And we've came a really long way, especially achieving marriage equality. But at the same time, we do have a long way to go, because at the end of the day, it's not just about the laws that protect us. We also need space. We also need to have platforms and spaces that really nurture the queer culture that we have. And I think it's just a matter of how are we going to move forward.
And are there any obstacles that you still face today as a gender equality activist? Because I'm pretty sure that many people still face this bias or prejudice as an LGBTQ person, and you identify yourself as non-binary as well, right? So what sort of challenges do you still face today?
I think it's very little compared to everyone else, because I try not to care much about it. But at the same time, when it comes to pronouns, I use they, them pronouns, but people still use she, her pronouns. And no matter how many times I tell people and remind them that I use they, them pronouns, especially when it comes to writing, people still forget about it. But for me, it's not a big issue, but I think for others, it's something that we really have to be really sensitive about and really listen to what people need. But I think what was bigger I would say would be the internalized stigma and internalized self-loathing that I had growing up all throughout this time because of the lack of representation, because of how people didn't accept me for who I am, especially when I was in the Japanese school that I was in for about 6 years. It just, when you finally feel like there's something that you fit in, it's difficult to say it out loud. Even to this day, even though I've been on the front lines and being a pretty active activist, it's sometimes difficult to talk to people who you haven't met for a long time and just come out to them and say, hey, I'm queer or something. And I think the biggest challenge would be communicating about yourself to those who are the closest to you, your family, your friends, your teacher, or just anyone who's around you, because they know you in a certain way, but they might not know you in your true self. So I think it's really about being confident in your own skin, but it does take time.
Why do you think that internal stigma still persists, especially in Asian culture?
I think it's because we are told to stay quiet a lot. And in Thai culture, what I hear often is เป็นอะไรก็ได้แต่ต้องเป็นคนดี You
That's
can
like
be
a pressure on you as well.
Yeah. And although not that many people told me that, I still get that comment a lot. You can be anything, but just be a good person. You need to achieve this and that. But why can't we be whoever we want to be? Why do we need to explain our identities? Why do we have to explain ourselves to you? So I think it's that aspect that makes it extremely difficult in Asian culture because of the expectations that's built on us.
With that internal struggle that you've been through since you were young, and you've made such an achievement, you must feel liberating now. How do you feel now?
I would say I feel way more liberated than when I was still in high school. And with the recognition from Time, it just made me much more, I would say, secure in my own identity. And I think going back to when I was in high school, it was a time where I was discovering myself, and with the shoulders, everything on my shoulders, like the name of my school that I had to carry as one of my school ambassadors, it was difficult because whenever I would have open houses, events, I was definitely expected to act a certain way, not by the school administrators or teachers, but from the prospective families. And I always had to put a mask on and not really be who I truly was at that time. But honestly speaking, I feel much more liberated when I'm in a different country. Just because I grew up here, there's so much memories, whether it's good or bad. It's a lot of mixed emotions.
And is there anything else you'd like to do to empower the LGBTQ community, either in Thailand or elsewhere around the region?
Yes, there's so many things I'm planning to work on. So one of them will be this thing called Queer Youth Collective. So it will be a queer youth collective for youth, created by youth, and youth being in the center, because I do not tolerate tokenism in our movement. And that's been happening for a really long time. We do need space for young people. We need a platform, and we need space where we have the autonomy to create, develop, and build, and not just having adults telling us what we could do. And I think I've been extremely lucky with Bangkok Pride and our amazing team, who's been extremely supportive of what I want to do and what the youth really wants. And I think that's a big project that's coming up. I really want to work on theater, musical. I've never seen queer musical in Thailand that much. It's very underground. And I think it's time to nurture that community. I want to see ballroom. I want to see streets or public spaces filled with colors, music, and a lot of vibrant energy. Because when I was in New York, that's what I felt. When I was at Washington Square Park, I saw a lot of people selling artworks, singing, busking, and I was like, this is what we need in Thailand. And Bangkok is a great way to start. And another one would be, I'd say, a grant or a mentorship program for high school students who want to start their own pride club. So all of it will be brought to you by Bangkok Pride.
Can't wait to see that. And one last question, if you could tell every single person around the world at the same time, what would you like to say to them?
Ooh, that's a difficult question. Because I think everyone has, everyone is going through different things. People have, like, you know, even with the US election that happened, it's really tough. And it's not just going to impact the US, but the whole world. So, but I think what I want to say to everyone is that your stories matter, your voice matters, and it's time to trust and believe in yourself, believe in the story that you have, because stories can turn pain into power, pain into passion, and pain into purpose.
We gotta say that your story has been a big inspiration for many of us here. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you so much.
ขอบคุณค่ะ
ขอบคุณมากค่ะ